You know, this is a weird one. I didn't think we'd ever be talking about something like this, but today we are heading over to the Columbus Blue Jackets and going over goaltender Elvis Merzlikins. Now, Merzlikins is one of multiple goalies that has rotated around the, let's just say, starting position, quote-unquote, in Columbus the past few years, mostly because the Blue Jackets have had a lot of other options and they've used guys to varying degrees of success. Merzlikins is just one of these names, and for the most part, I think Merzlikins is really just the same guy that people have always known him to be. 29 years old, 6'3", 183, signed till the end of 2027, making $5.4 million a year. He's certainly not the cheapest goalie in the world, and you could debate that for the $5.4 million cap that he has, maybe he's not even really too worth it. The reason I say that is because this season with Columbus, Merzlikins has a .907 save percentage and .325 goals against average in 23 games. That's it's okay. The goals against, you'd probably want that to be a little bit lower. Save percentage is above average, I'm pretty sure. Last year, though, Merzlikins had an .876 save percentage and a .423 goals against in 30 games. The year before that, though, he was actually the number one starter for Columbus. .907 save percentage, 59 games played, and a .322 goals against. And if you go back in the years, you could see the numbers. He was a lot better in his first season. .923 save percentage in 2019-2020. That's a great season, especially out of a rookie. He even had a .946 save percentage and a .196 goals against in the playoffs that year. Just total great stuff. If I recall correctly, was that the bubble year, the weird situation with the play-in series and everything? Was that when they played Toronto? I think that might have been it. Yeah, 2019-20, right? So Merzlikins definitely had a better run earlier in his career versus right now, although you could say that this season is a huge step up from what he had accomplished last year. Part of the reason Merzlikins is in the conversation today is because of the goaltending situation just in general with CBJ. Merzlikins has split the load with Tarasov, Spencer Martin, and Jet Greaves, each guy having varying levels of success. Tarasov has an .883, Spencer Martin has an .887, and you have Jet Greaves, who has a .935 in 2 games played. Not bad, honestly, for a guy whom we never really thought to be in this position in the first place. I mean, taking a look at where Jet Greaves came from this season, Cleveland Monsters, AHL guy, he was called up to play in relief, and he looked pretty good. So good for him for getting this resume on his profile. But Elvis Merzlikins, with all things considered, has pretty much been the quote-unquote best full-time goalie with the Blue Jackets. With this in mind, though, there were some comments made by him earlier today that really make things weird as to how his deployment in Columbus is being handled. The video is right here. He spoke to the media today about his status with Columbus. He says he loves Columbus and his teammates, but he also says a new scenario for him has been discussed by both sides. Now, what does that really mean? Well, here's the quote from Aaron Portzline. Elvis Merzlikins said he has not requested a trade, but that he and the Columbus Blue Jackets have agreed to find a new scenario for him. I love Columbus. I love these guys. I grew up here. However, I'm not a backup goaltender. And that's so interesting to me, because if you look at it on paper, I mean, Elvis Merzlikins has the majority of the starts for Columbus. He has the best save percentage out of guys who have played multiple games, like in multiple stretches, not just Jet Greaves, who had 2 separate games one time. But Merzlikins technically is the best guy here, so for him to go out there and say, yeah, I need a new scenario, this is not a trade request, but I need a new scenario, I'm not a backup goalie, that's a very interesting kind of rhetoric to use. And some of the replies, I mean, they go out there and say similar things. Why Columbus wouldn't just continue playing him while seeking a trade partner doesn't make sense. Now they've revealed their hand and could just be paying Elvis $5 million to not play, as it's going to be tough to unload that contract. Another reply says he hasn't performed to his fullest ability. The Blue Jackets brass clearly has had enough. He will not do any better on another team. He had a few good teams in front of him in the past, and the results were not exactly great. Here's another tweet that I thought was interesting. Merzlikins is in year 2 of a 5-year, $27 million contract that includes a 10-team no-trade list. So there is a little bit of flexibility here for Columbus, but not a lot. There are only 22 teams that Elvis Merzlikins is allowed to be traded to, and you have to go out there and think, among these teams, which one of them could actually take on a $5.4 million cap hit for a goaltender that's barely under a .910 save percentage and who had an .876 save percentage last year? This is the peculiarity of the Merzlikins situation right now. And if you go over to some of the other tweets, this is an interesting thought brought up by Elliot Friedman. He said this on 32 Thoughts. I wondered if this is a situation where they're either preparing to trade him or they're considering buying him out at the end of the year. Let me stress, this is just purely my opinion. Friedman says that I've heard that Elvis Merzlikins is an outgoing guy. He's a bold guy, and he's definitely a presence in that room. But I had heard rumors that this had something to do with players being upset, and the organization being upset at his reaction during the game versus Washington. He does mention that Pascal Vincent has disputed the idea that Elvis being a healthy scratch is because the players and organization are unhappy with his actions during the Washington game. It definitely appears that it might just be time for the Blue Jackets and Elvis, that maybe we get to a point here where everybody starts to look for an alternative home for Merzlikins. Friedman then says, I do think some of the teams who have looked at goalies this year have talked to Columbus about Merzlikins, but the salary is a difficult one to fit. I'm not surprised that nothing has happened yet, but it seems like this is where it's headed. Now, if you wanted to talk about the odd stuff that was going on, this is what they were going after. Yeah, Merzlikins getting into it with Tom Wilson, and to be fair, it's tough not to go out there and get pissed off when Tom Wilson is in your crease. And the video is right here. I don't want to click on it because it's copyrighted material, but yeah, Elvis Merzlikins and Tom Wilson, they did get into it. However, the Capitals did end up winning the game, and that was where you got this beautiful picture at the end of it. This was from like 2 weeks ago, mind you. So maybe there was already some sort of a thought floating around as to whether or not there is maybe some discomfort with the way Elvis handled that game, and maybe that's why Friedman went out there and went on this little thought. But either way, it is just an interesting thing to think about. And we do have a few other tweets. Elvis Merzlikins made it clear today that he believes he deserves #1 minutes. Even when Korpisalo was here, I told you many times, guys, I'm not a backup and I won't be a backup. I'm going to believe in myself. You can call me arrogant, but right now I'm going to copy the words of Zlatan. I am not going to try to pronounce that. Sorry, Mr. I am not arrogant. I'm just confident. I know I'm not a #2 or a #3. And that is a really strong comment from a guy who last year had an .876 save percentage. Like, I don't know. Like it or not, man, this is the bold and brash personality that is Elvis Merzlikins. I applaud him for being bold like this. I applaud him for speaking his mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to agree with what it is that he says, and I'm pretty sure that's a fair response to it, right? He's going out there and pretty much saying that he feels like he needs a change of scenery, and he feels like he deserves a better team in front of him, I guess. I mean, I don't think Elvis Merzlikins is good enough to make a team like Columbus, that's as bad as Columbus, a better team. But it feels more to me like Elvis Merzlikins is in a position where he's demanding, let's just say, a better opportunity, and the #1 path to being the starter on that opportunity. And I don't necessarily know if that's a possible thing for him to get this season, you know? I'm not really too sure. We have ourselves one more tweet that kind of just sums it all up. He won't tolerate being relegated to the third goalie position. It didn't get to the point where he requested a trade, but he said it's a mutual agreement with the team that a new scenario is necessary. He said he'll keep his home here. He loves Columbus, but he needs a new scenario. And I don't know about you, but if he's like, yeah, both I and the team agree that a new scenario is necessary, that's kind of like a trade request. I don't know, like, we're getting into semantics here, but bottom line is, Merzlikins would like a new opportunity, he wants out, and the Blue Jackets are like, okay, we could trade you away. Like, we've got Tarasov, we've got Jet Greaves, we've got guys here, we're doing fine. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire weird Elvis Merzlikins situation, how we've never seen anything like this before, but how we're seeing it now in front of our eyes in CBJ. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.